You know that feeling when you spent most of the day just stuck in bed, completely and totally drained. It's a feeling a lot of us know. And that deep, deep exhaustion, it can make you wonder, am I just being lazy? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into that exact question. Does that hit close to home? That constant fatigue where you just can't seem to find the energy for anything? And of course, the first word that jumps into your mind is lazy. It's such an easy label to slap on ourselves, but what if it's just not the right one? Because what if this feeling, this total lack of energy, has nothing to do with your character? What if it's not a flaw, but a condition? What if it's actually burnout? Just asking that question, it changes everything. It shifts you away from blaming yourself and starts you on a path to understanding what's really going on. So what is burnout exactly? Well, here's the official breakdown. It's a state of complete exhaustion. We're talking emotional, physical, and mental. It happens when you're under way too much stress for way too long and your body and mind just can't cope anymore. The key thing to remember is it's not a choice. It's what happens when you've been overwhelmed for too long. And if you're sitting there thinking, wow, this sounds kind of familiar, you are so far from alone. Get this, a survey back in 2010 found that a staggering 75% of adults in the US have felt the symptoms of burnout. That's 3 out of every 4 people. This is not some small niche problem. It's a massive issue. Okay, so here's the million-dollar question. How do you tell the difference? How do you know if it's burnout or just laziness? That's what we're tackling right now. We're going to walk through 6 really clear signs that what you're feeling is something much more serious than a simple lack of motivation. Let's dive in. First step, sign number 1, you feel this profound sense of disconnection. It's that weird feeling of just going through the motions, almost like you're on autopilot. You know, psychologists have a name for this. It's called depersonalization. It's a state where you feel totally detached from your own thoughts, your feelings, and even your own life. It's like you're a spectator watching a movie of your own life. There's this emotional numbness, this emptiness. You see, you're not lazy, you're just feeling completely helpless. And that is incredibly draining. For a second sign, I want you to do a little time travel. Think about your past self. Were you always like this? Because this is a huge clue. Laziness is usually seen as a pretty stable part of someone's personality over time. But burnout is a change, a big, noticeable change in how you act. And here's where it gets crystal clear. Someone who is lazy tends to be, well, consistently unmotivated. But if you were once a go-getter, a high achiever, and now suddenly you're exhausted and just don't care anymore, that is a massive red flag for burnout. It's not who you are, it's a state you're in. All right, let's move on to sign number 3. And this one is tied so closely to motivation, passion. I want you to think about the things you used to absolutely love, the hobbies or work that really lit you up. Now, how do you feel about them today? The difference here is everything. Burnout is a thief. It doesn't just make you feel numb, it actively steals the joy from the things you were passionate about. It can get so bad you actually start to resent those activities because now they just feel like another demand, another source of pressure. That is a whole different world from just not having many strong interests to begin with. Sign number 4 is all about your emotions. Have you noticed yourself getting snappy lately? Easily annoyed by things that never used to bother you? This sudden emotional roller coaster is a super common sign that you are just plain running on empty. And the contrast here is like night and day. When you're experiencing burnout, you can feel totally out of control emotionally. That is the exact opposite of the relaxed, laid-back vibe that we usually associate with laziness. So if your mood has taken a sharp nosedive recently, burnout could be the culprit. Our 5th sign is one of the most visible ones, and honestly, one of the most worrying. You've started to neglect taking care of yourself. This is what happens when the exhaustion gets so bad that even the most basic fundamental habits start to crumble. This can look like a lot of different things. Maybe your sleep schedule is all over the place, or you're dodging calls from friends because just the thought of socializing is exhausting. Even simple tasks feel like climbing a mountain. And again, what's the key? You weren't always this way. This is a change. Okay, so this brings us to our final and maybe most important sign of all, because none of this just happens out of the blue. Burnout doesn't show up one morning and say, I live here now. It's not a switch. It's a slow, creeping process, a gradual decline. Yeah, burnout does not happen overnight. All these things we've been talking about, the disconnection, the lost motivation, the irritability, they build on each other, little by little over time. And understanding that it's a progression is so important because burnout actually happens in distinct stages. Now, knowing these stages can be a game changer. It helps you see what's happening before it gets totally debilitating. So let's break down the 5 stages that map out this whole process. It's wild, but it actually starts with a honeymoon phase. You're energized, you're committed, but then comes the onset of stress. You start noticing some bad days. Then that turns into chronic stress, where the pressure feels relentless and your motivation takes a nosedive. Stage 4 is full-blown burnout, where all those critical signs are screaming at you. And finally, stage 5, habitual burnout. This is where it's become so embedded in your life that it feels normal, which makes it so much harder to address. Okay, so we've gone through the signs, we've mapped out the stages, and the whole point of this explainer is to arm you with that awareness, because knowing what's happening is always the first, most powerful step you can take. So why does all of this matter so much? Because if you can spot these signs early, like back in stage 2, it is so much easier to recover. It's about taking the stigma away from this experience and really understanding that this is a serious issue. It is not a character flaw. And maybe the most important thing to remember is that there is real, effective, professional help out there. And that's where we'll wrap up. We've laid out the signs, the stages, the huge differences between burnout and laziness. So now, the final question really is for you. Knowing everything you know now, how will you choose to listen to what your own mind and body might be trying to tell you?